Welcome to the InnerChild Podcast, where we have authentic conversations about growth, childhood, and passions. I'm JB, and that's my brother, my co-host, OD.
Yo.
Today's guest is a force. She's a proud HBCU graduate, a founder, a mentor, a leader, and an unapologetic advocate for our people and our institutions. She's worn many hats than most. She's an entrepreneur, a political voice, a new podcast host, and a movement builder, all while staying grounded in her values. Born in Atlanta, she's making waves now in North Carolina. She's founder of HBCU Links, host of Black in Motion podcast, and the founder of Braxton Simpson Enterprises, an HBCU mentorship program which takes students from passion to purpose. Let's welcome to the show none other than Braxton Simpson. Clap it up.
That was so nice.
For sure. We gotta come with a nice introduction. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
What up, Brax?
Yeah, for
sure, man. I really appreciate you stopping by the pod, showing some love like always.
Absolutely. I had to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, we got another person in the family.
I know, another Simpson on. Something's running in the water.
We might have to get little sis now.
I know, right? Get your boss.
I heard she the star of the family, so...
Yeah, she is a little superstar.
Yeah, we might have to get it next, man. But look, let's get into it. We talked about this on the pre-show, right? We said we're gonna do the drip check. We said we're gonna talk about it today. I love this fit, by the way.
Thank you.
I love the hair, everything. It's giving summer. It's giving summer.
Thank you. It's
what I'm saying? For sure. So let's talk about it. Drip check. Tell me what's up with the fit.
Well, let's start with this.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Go for it.
give a little story about this fit check.
Okay.
My flight, my bags never came. Let's just talk about that. My bags
Yeah.
never came. But you know what? We're gonna talk about why you stay ready.
Right.
To get ready.
So
Okay,
go ahead.
So something was just telling me yesterday, like, throw something in your little weekender bag.
Right.
Because I had to end up checking my carry-on bag, which was so crazy. But I had this little jumpsuit. I had my makeup bag, my toiletry bag, so it was good.
Wow.
Yeah. So we made it work.
Yeah, and it's working. It's working. And that's crazy. So what's up with your bag though? Like, you're not gonna get it right now, or what's the deal?
Is en route, so we'll get it later.
Okay. They're gonna have to, shave.
Do a little something.
Yeah, they're gonna have to shave some money off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what's up.
All right, so we're gonna take it all the way back to the beginning, Brax. We had your brother on, and he shared his POV on his experience, his upbringing, growing up in Georgia, in Marietta. But I want to hear it from you, since you're older than obviously your brother. But just provide our viewers and the audience a little bit of context about your upbringing, what your childhood was like, and just things that you learned early on as it relates to values that were instilled in you at an early age from your parents, your community, and those around you as well.
Yes. So 2 things that I can probably say that really instilled in me were entrepreneurship, but then also activism. So I kind of come from 2 different perspectives. From the entrepreneurship perspective, my parents taught us entrepreneurship very early. They had a summer camp when we were little, I was maybe in the 3rd or 4th grade. And it was really cool because it had a really nice value proposition. Basically, students would be able to come in, say they were going to the 3rd grade. They would come and they would be able to learn all the 3rd grade curriculum prior to going to 3rd grade. And so their parents would send them there because not only were they having fun, being able to connect with other kids, but they also were prepared for the next grade, which is really important for Black students so they could be ahead because we already know how that goes sometimes. So we watched them do that all the way up until the recession. The recession in 2008 or 9, it kind of took the business out. But we saw them hustle and just start something because they saw there was a necessity. And so I think for us, or at least for me, entrepreneurship and activism have always kind of went hand in hand. So I saw my parents need to solve a social issue for Black kids, and then they created something to make sure that they wouldn't have to struggle. And so for me, that's kind of how I've always created. And that's the way I find myself being creative, is being a social entrepreneur. I always create things when I find that it's something I don't have, or something that my friends or peers don't have, or something that we need as a people. So yeah, the activism piece kind of started back in high school. So we grew up in Marietta, Georgia. Honestly, although it is pretty Black, now it was not ran that way from like the
Mm.
top up. And so growing up in Marietta and like being someone who was very ambitious and wanted to lead and do all the things, that was not really like, it was kind of frowned upon. And so me and a lot of my friends, we always wanted to be involved in things, but at every turn, there was some administrator or some parent or some student that was kind of trying to tear us down. And so we saw a lot of things happen along the way, but I realized that I had a more activist spirit when watched some things just kind of with Black people that were getting leadership positions in the city, just kind of come in and then go right back out. I was like, So I started protest up at the school board, started leading movements, and started getting people involved, my peers. And I think that's where my like organizing journey started. Then I obviously went to Tennessee State, was able to build upon that and lead some other initiatives, got involved with RISE and led the National Get Out the Vote campaign for Alpha Kappa Alpha for HBCUs. And then now I'm still doing that work. So, but it started very young with my parents just teaching us the importance of solving a social issue and the fact that you could also do that with entrepreneurship.
Yeah, for sure. And staying on that, we're gonna, get to your matriculation, as you get older and, to TSU and so on and so forth. But as relates to just sticking on topic of like your parents, right? I see at present day of, how they're always got, a business going on, like
Yeah.
they're always out in the community, right? So outside of like the summer camp, what were some other things that they taught you necessarily, even if it wasn't necessarily from the business itself, or if it's something that they would like directly tell, you and your siblings about, the entrepreneurship side, as well as like, the activism side and just like community involvement, community engagement?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing that they always taught us was to always keep people at the center of your service, and then you'll always be serving, right? And I think sometimes it can be so easy to look at yourself and like what you want, especially in entrepreneurship. Like a lot of times we start things because we want it,
Mhm.
which is, I think that's a part of it. But they've always taught us to keep people at the center of our service. And I've noticed like, I know that's my bread and butter, especially with Braxton Simpson Enterprises, the HBCU mentorship program. It's the girls. They have to stay at the center of everything I do. And if they don't, I'm not helping them. And so it can't just be about me. And I see it with my brother and like how he's built everything that he's built. He always keeps people and others just in the center of what he does. And same with my sister, my parents. But it's something they've instilled in us is just always keeping people at the front of mind.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I gave Blake like his flowers when we got on the show, when he came on the show, and I told him the same thing. Like, it's not a moment where I've not seen Blake, cultivate experiences with people around him, and it's always been like Blake has been this big people person. So like anything I try to take from Blake, it's the fact that he's able to just bring people together from Atlanta, homies from Raleigh, us, like people that he met at FAMU, his football team. Like he's able to bring like everybody together and make it one big community. Nobody feels left out. Nobody feels missed out. And that's a great family thing, right? And he says he got it from the family. You saying you got that from your mom and your dad as well. But obviously, you the big sis. You
Yeah.
know, you got Blake, which is the younger brother, and then you got
Little Boston.
Boston,
Yeah.
right? Who's the younger sister, and that's a big hat to wear. I'm not the big brother. My sister's a couple years older than me. What was that relationship like from brother and sisters? Obviously, with you being like the older one, and what kind of like effect did that have on you, understanding that you were the older sibling?
Boston and Blake are almost like my kids. At least to me. At least
little bro.
You my son.
Blake actually hates that because he's like, we're literally the same age, which we are, but at the same time, there is a big difference.
It
like,
is.
when you're the oldest sibling. But they're like my kids. Like I love them so much. But I've always taken it very personal to make sure that I'm setting a great example for them. Because I realize, and I think a lot of like older siblings can relate to this, is you have influence on your siblings, and a much bigger influence than you might even realize. And I don't think I realized it until I started getting a little bit older. And, me and Blake were younger. We would argue and stuff when we were like little. But as we got older, we started to become best friends. And so I saw even more the importance of how influential, like my perspective, like if I tell Blake something, he's pretty much gonna do it. Because he takes my word and like what I say and my perspective very seriously. And I don't take that lightly because I know that what I do has a grave impact on him specifically, but then also my little sister because she's 8 years younger. So she's coming up. But yeah, it's been something that's really, really important to me. Just to make sure that I'm being as good of an example as possible for them and just showing them what they need to do. And I know also like a lot of times if I take the step to do something, they will see the importance of it.
Right.
Yeah. So I think like going to school, like obviously going to school was an expectation for our family, but I knew I had to go and I couldn't just go. I had to go and do things and be involved and just really enjoy the experience, make the most of the experience because I knew Blake was coming a year after. And that's how our life has been. So he had to at least see me do it to also know what's possible for him too.
That's real.
So yeah, there's several examples of that like throughout our life, but one is like we both were ag majors in school. I didn't know that I really wanted to do ag, but I tried it and I tried to go super hard for it so that Blake could think of something he might want to do when he got to college. And he did end up doing an ag degree and doing really well in it. But that's just an example of like, he saw that was something I was doing that was really going well and it was influential for him.
Yeah.
So I just take that very seriously, making sure that they have a good example.
Yeah, I think that's very valid. I mean, it's something that I know that my dad has taught me over the years. Like, whatever you do, your brother's gonna follow. And it's like he's his own person, he's his own man at the end of the day. And it's sometimes hard to grasp that, but I definitely have seen that as I've gotten older. And similar to what you're saying, like me and my brother, we used to be going at it. We used to be fighting and just my brother is kind of a smart aleck, if you will, so to speak. So, I'm saying him one thing, he's giving me a well, technically it's this, you know what I mean? Type response. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like present day now, our relationship is to where, he's calling me about advice of how he should move in certain situations. And, I'm giving him the real based off of, and we're 2 years apart. So I'm giving him, what I would do based off, personal experience or based off of, just my thought of the situation. But it does feel good to know that, like, although, he's doing his own thing and he's doing very great in his, his job, his life, to this point, that he still, comes to me, for advice on certain things. And as an older sibling, that's just, it's a good feeling. It's undeniable. So it's good to see that dynamic. And, I definitely, knowing both of y'all personally can see, how that, plays a factor in y'all's relationship, which is a good thing.
For sure. But I'll say also, like, as I've gotten older, Blake has had more influence on me.
And that's,
too,
as
we've gotten older.
Yep.
And I didn't always look at it like that because it always like, for a while, it felt like I always just thought, I'm probably a little crazy, but I just thought like, I just felt so much older. I felt so much older. But then as we got older and I'm like, he is maturing into such a great like young man. I'm like, oh girl, we are literally a year apart. Yeah. But I think a lot of times as the older sibling, you just kind of, you just have to take it up that notch a little bit. But he's influenced me a lot, like especially his entrepreneurship, especially over probably the last like year and a half, 2 years, just seeing how fearless he is. How he goes for anything, how he's not afraid to fail. Those are things that I've seen as opportunities for growth for me. So just being able to like share in those moments and also receive advice from him on how to move into certain situations. And then also just him just being himself and me being able to watch him live out his dream is really inspiring.
Yeah, Blake is also like a social light. Do you think that like, him being, as sociable as he is, did that like wear off on you a little bit?
So it's kind of crazy you say that because Blake was not always that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
No,
said that, he said that.
Blake was extremely shy. Like, I remember the first argument me and Blake got in when we were younger was because I would just talk for him sometimes. Like, I would just, like, he wasn't saying nothing. So I would just I would talk.
Wake up, bro.
And finally, he was finally like, stop talking for me. Like, I can talk for myself. And I was like, we were probably like maybe 8 or 9. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not saying nothing else then. But I think that's when he started to kind of really come into himself. But honestly, when he got to FAMU, it's like a light switch just flipped. He really had an opportunity to, really step into himself. Joining the frat with y'all was really great for him socially and just developmentally as well. And y'all push him so much. So I'm like so grateful for that. But yeah, he really just came into his full self. He was not always like that though, at all. I was like considered the social like sibling. So it's interesting now because I be wanting to chill and Blake be wanting to turn up. So yeah, it's definitely it's been a switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a switch.
For sure. So I want to kind of shift a little bit. So, we talk about, the family dynamic growing up and like everything that your parents instilled in you, which gave you confidence, right? But I want to touch on something that might be a little bit personal that I want you to share and open up about that may have, took your confidence down a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you were born with, I want to say, right, cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
So if you could just touch on that and just for people out there who may, be dealing with something similar and just share about your experience with it and just how you overcame it, growing up and everything like that, if you don't mind.
That's a great question. People really don't ever ask me about that. So, and it's crazy because when I was younger, I would shy away from talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the older I've gotten, I've realized that is my strength. And that is where a lot of the lessons that I've learned about resilience and hustle and overcoming came from. So when I was young, like little, when I was born with Erb's palsy. And essentially, long story short, doctor pulled my arm out, ruptured my nerves permanently. Thankfully, I don't have as bad as a case as like a lot of people do, where their arm is just kind of stuck in that situation. But it does definitely cause some challenges. I think I've just kind of got used to the pain. I go to physical therapy. I've been going my whole life, and do things for maintenance. But yeah, the doctors really said I would never play sports. I would never write. I might not ever have like, a good functional job because they didn't know if I would be able to type and all the things. So there were so many things that they told me I would not be able to do, not be able to play sports. And thankfully, I have the parents that I do that were like, oh no, that's not gonna be a situation. Yeah. And that also has nothing to do with your mind. So I actually grew up not thinking anything was wrong. Like I would wear a cast to sleep. I knew that. I knew I had to go to physical therapy 2 or 3 times a week. But I don't think I realized that other kids weren't doing that. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I got to middle school that I really realized that, okay, I'm trying out for the basketball team. So, that did open my eyes a little bit to the fact that there was something a little bit different with me. Mm-hmm. But I still I made the team. I still made the team. I just learned to... Had
a nice crossover, huh?
Yeah. Very heavy left.
Okay.
Very heavy left. But, I learned... I think in that moment, it just kind of came real for me that was kind of like my experience. Because I really couldn't do like a right hand layup for real. Like I couldn't really do anything with my right hand, but I was still very determined to overcome it. And so when I made the team, kids say things not out of trying to be mean, but just not knowing. So that wasn't something I was sharing with people because I didn't really think it was something to share. Yeah. And so they were like, Braxton, you're going to make us have to run again if you don't use your right hand. And da-da-da. So then I had to start speaking up for myself. I'm like, hey, listen, I can only do what I can do. Like, it is what it is. And, I played with those girls for the next several years up through high school. So it all became normal for everybody else. But I found in that moment it was a struggle for me to start to speak about because then it's not until people point things out, and I think we see this a lot that you start to like reflect on, is something wrong with me?
Mm.
And so that's, I think, when I started to have a little bit more insecurities about it as I got older and started, middle school and high school. Yeah, and I don't think I realized that I hadn't really talked about it, that I was suppressing my feelings around it until I was getting ready to graduate. And I was chosen to be our baccalaureate speaker for graduation. And I decided I was going to talk about triumph, because I think, my senior year is when things started to pop off for me, and I started to become the Braxton that I always wanted to be. So I was getting involved in like these different leadership programs and had the opportunity to, do some things like with the Steve Harvey Foundation, and got some articles, and it just different things started happening my senior year. And I felt like people started to make like assumptions about me. And I felt like it would be a great opportunity for me to share the reason why I go so hard, and the reason I like work just 10 times harder than I'm not gonna say everybody else, but I work really hard, is because I've always had to. I've always had to, from the very beginning, from the very first day, being here, I've always just had to overcome. So it's second nature to me to work hard. So that's what I spoke about, and I think that freed me from just feeling any way about it.
That was a lot right there. But I'll start off by saying thanks for opening up about that. And I think that's so important, that like your parents never made you feel like you were different or you were other than the next kid or somebody else, right? And that, if anything, that it probably made you go harder, like naturally, without even knowing, because you're just doing more than at that time the average kid. To you're going twice as hard to be just as good or even better, right? So I think that's important. I think that goes back to the earlier question about the family dynamic and what your parents like instilled in you. Hard work, determination, grit, and things will come out on the other side of it. And I can confidently say it has to this point in your life. So shout out to your parents for that.
I think, like, they taught me basically not to use anything that was a challenge as a crutch.
Yep.
And I think that was really important. And especially when you relay that back to like how life is in general, you all as Black men, young Black men, me as a young Black woman, like, life is hard. And like you said, we have to do twice as much just to get as far as the next person. And so I feel like I learned that lesson very young. And it's helped me in life for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talking about obviously, your undergrad experience, right? You went to TSU.
Yeah.
Another HBCU. Shout out to all the HBCUs.
The best HBCU.
Woo!
Well,
Look, too many FAMU people.
Yeah,
might be a little imbalanced here. I don't know how much you have to say, but we'll let you have that. We let you have that. But obviously, right. Went to TSU, right? Spent 4 years in Tennessee. Talk a little bit about that time, right, at TSU. Some of the things you was able to do, the experience that an HBCU brought to your life, and obviously, you also, spent time living with other family members while you were there, and how that kind of just, shaped your young adult years.
Yeah, it was great. Like, it was literally the best decision of my life to go to Tennessee State. So like I said, when I left high school, there was just so much turmoil around that time, specifically like heightened racial tension. I just knew like I had to go to an HBCU. There was no other option. My parents also went to HBCUs. They went to A&M, Alabama A&M. So yeah, I applied to 4 HBCUs and I got into them, and I went to Tennessee State.
Right.
TSU was amazing. Like you said, I did have family down there. My grandparents lived down there, and my mom's entire side of the family. My mom's from Nashville. So it was great to be able to connect with that side of the family a little bit more in depth, because we are from Atlanta. So that was awesome just to spend that time with them over those 4 years. But just the experience itself, TSU was just everything. A big, I would say, just cultural pot of Black excellence. I just felt right at home, and it's hard to really put it into words, but I feel like the woman that I've become, especially the things that I see myself doing in the future, but also the things I've been able to accomplish post-graduation are all as a result of like going to Tennessee State. They just instill hard work into me, the opportunities, the community. Like literally, it's so crazy. They always talk about like, in freshman orientation, they're like, look to your left, look to your right. You're going to be like working with these people someday. Like I'm working with my classmates on different things and being able to do business with them and support their endeavors, and they're able to do the same. So that's always really nice. My educational experience was awesome. I got a degree in agriculture and political science, and I've been able to use both of them in both my corporate career and also my like nonprofit
entrepreneurship
experience.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's awesome too. So yeah, it was absolutely like the best time of my life. Of course, made amazing friends. My best friend is like everything to me. And I got her from going to TSU. Obviously got to join Alpha Kappa Alpha while I was there, and be the president while I was there and lead the chapter and be a part of that legacy. So it really changed my life in so many ways. And I see a lot of the things and skills and triumph and all the things that happened while I was at Tennessee State showing up now in the workplace, in the way that I deal with business and relationships, just having to get things out the mud, all of it. Having to, even the runaround that you get just being at school, just learning how to solve problems. And so I see it all manifesting itself.
How did you like, I guess, fine tune things that you may have already came into TSU with? So i.e., right, like you mentioned, your senior year of high school, that's when you started to find yourself a little bit more. You started to talk about like the activism and pulling people together for outreach and stuff like that. So you get to TSU, like, are you immediately, trying to join a club or organization, or is it a natural effect to where you're naturally becoming a part of these organizations? You're naturally, leading different groups, leading different seminars. Like how does that like flow for you to where then, by senior year, you got all these accolades, awards, accomplishments, and you're ready to take on that next step in the adult life, if you will?
It's a good question. I think going back to what my parents instilled into me as a child, just kind of like that social entrepreneurship mindset of always solving a problem and finding a way to like help people through it. So when I got to school, I already knew like I wanted to be in like SGA or something like that.
Yeah.
That was just me. So I was actually Miss Freshman. I ran for Miss Freshman when I got to school, and I ended up doing that my freshman year, and that was quite the experience. It was so much fun, but y'all, it was a lot. It was a lot. Like as a freshman, I was like, oh my gosh, like we were traveling. So the one thing I would say, the one skill I did not have when I came into school, and my dad used to be on me about it all the time in high school, was time management. Like I was bad about it. I would get in trouble like for literally double booking stuff all the time and running my parents around like crazy. And so, yeah, that's something I had to learn freshman year. Like I had to learn that very quickly, because now I was like traveling on Thursdays and having tests on these days, and it was not working out when I first got to school. So that's something I really had to I had to fine tune that quick. Yeah, but everything else, like, the agriculture, when I got into the College of Ag, I realized there weren't a lot of women in there. Obviously, we were all Black, but there weren't a lot of women.
Right.
So I founded Tiger Women in Agriculture. I'm like, okay, we're going to get something specific for the Black women here that are going into agriculture, start something there. I knew I always had a passion for activism. There was also scholarship money and research money in agriculture. So that's what got me there in the first place, so I could go to school. But yeah, as time went on, I'm like, okay, I'm finishing up my degree. I'm a little early. I still have this like nag at me to like get into the activism. So I picked up the political science degree my junior year and pumped it out. And so I ended up graduating with 2 degrees, but it's been great because it's equipped me to be in the ag space, but then also to be like in the nonprofit social activism space too.
Yeah, so, obviously you're in Riley now still, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Quick side note. I don't really love Riley like that.
You came for Dreamville.
Yeah, but it's just so quiet.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the peace.
It's a change of pace for me coming from Atlanta.
Yeah, it's very it's really calm. It's just
Yeah.
I hear no noise outside, which is great. I
Yeah.
feel like if I was a lot older, it would be something that I would, be able
Like
to
a place
deal
you
with.
go get a house or something.
Yeah, you get a house, you get your acres,
Chill out.
you chill out. McDonald's closed by 9 p.m.
Oh, for real.
It's
Like,
it's crazy, bro.
I be racing to get to like the food spot
Yeah.
on my street because they be closing 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's wild. But I mean, obviously, right, being a Riley, you talked about being able to pick up, two degrees while you were at TSU. Obviously, you continued your education, and obviously, and also I don't know this, but when did you start this entrepreneurship? And I know you said it
Yeah.
started back in high school with the leadership programs, going on to college and creating all these different aspects. But when did this start beginning? Was this a post TSU thing?
This
Okay.
was middle school.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I became an entrepreneur when I was 13. My first business was Girls Got Game. It was when I made that basketball team in 6th grade. And I noticed that we had a lot of girls on the team that wanted to be more feminine, but didn't. We were playing a male dominant sport. So I was like, I just started like making myself hair bows and like designing socks.
Right.
And the girls on my team were like, could you make me some? I'm like, sure, why not? And then it started to be a thing where like the teams we were playing wanted it as well.
Dang.
And so I realized, okay, well, my parents, they were like, girl, this is a business. Like, you're going to start you a business. And so Girls Got Game was born and ended up selling probably like thousands of pairs of socks in the city of Marietta because it went from just being for girls to then my brother's team wanted the socks. And they didn't want just blue socks. They wanted white socks. And then they wanted burgundy. They wanted green. They wanted pink for Breast Cancer Month. And then the football team wanted it because Blake played
Jeez.
football. So
Yeah.
now it wasn't just the football team, like the middle school football team. Then it was the high school football team. Then it was the feeder programs. So it just like, the business just blew up. And it was to the point where my dad, at the time he was working at the high school that we fed up into, he was literally like bringing socks to school to like give to the football teams and stuff. For people that had ordered them. And then the basketball teams wanted them. So basically every sport ended up having the
Right.
socks that I designed. And so then I was like, okay, I kind of like this. Like, and it was solving a problem. And so that was my first business. I then had a business right before I graduated high school that was called Underground Apparel. And it was Black Pride Apparel because we just needed to feel good during that time. Did a few things in between. That went into college a little bit into my freshman year. And then my senior year, I started Braxton Simpson Enterprises because after I ran a campaign at school, I honestly just realized I had an ear for the people. People were listening to what I said. And also people wanted something that I had to give. And so I started that business and then built the HBCU mentorship program out of that. And yeah, and then other ventures have just spearheaded from that. But
Yeah.
What have been some of your biggest surprises with BSE so far? Like working with different, because you don't just work with like TSU students, you work with students, different parts of the country. So what's been the biggest surprises and things that you've like, okay, wow, that you've learned during this time?
Honestly, and like this is something for everybody like listening, I think my biggest surprise was like, girl, you don't have to know exactly what you're doing to like have an impact. And like if you have something that is valuable, and if you're walking in purpose and God has really positioned you and like ordered your steps in this direction, it's gonna work. And I think that has been my biggest surprise is how fast it grew. I started off with 4 people, like in 2021. It was like 3 girls and a guy. And then I realized my passion was more just for the girls. The next year, we probably had about 30 girls. And then the next year, it was like 125 people applied.
So, not to cut you off, is it just they come in as freshmen and you're mentoring them throughout the matriculation of the all 4 years, or is it just a year mentorship? Like,
Yeah,
explain how it.
it's year to year.
Okay.
And people apply for it. We have several people who have been in there from their freshman year,
Mhm.
and now a lot of my freshmen are about to be seniors. So that's exciting. But they do apply from year to year.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we have covered, I think, 13 HBCUs so far, as far as like representation.
Dope.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, any plans on like expansion on things that you're working on to help make it grow and just overall like
Yeah.
get the message out there about what it is that you do for the mentorship?
Yeah, every year changes
Mhm.
because I learn something new every year. But this year is going to be a lot more cohort style. So we're
Okay.
going to have a smaller group of people, smaller group of students. Obviously, they'll still have that one-on-one mentorship with individuals. And the cool thing about it is it's not like mentors who are like 20, 30 years older than them.
Yeah.
They're mentors that are maybe like 5 to 7 years, but they recently went through
Yep.
the same things that they went through or have a similar career path and can give them the real, and it's a little bit more relevant to their right now. Yeah, but it's gonna be more cohort style. We tested some things out, some different workshops
Mhm.
and speaker series and things like that. So this year would just be a smaller group, but it'll be, I think, a lot more impactful.
For sure.
Mhm.
And before I let OD go, I just think it's important that what it is that you're doing, because I think so many times, especially as like young adults or young people, we tend to, or as a general consensus here, we tend to, say things that we don't like or think that wish we had better, and
Yeah.
and then we kind of just talk about it. But you're really putting action into those. Let's say you didn't have mentors, right? I'm sure you definitely had mentors, but you saw a need, like you said, this whole episode, you saw a need, a niche of where you could have an impact, and make things better for someone else. And I think that it just says a lot about yourself, your character, and just your willingness and drive to make things happen. And you've seen the growth over these last few years, so it's exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, passion to purpose.
Facts.
We love that. We love that.
Yes.
But listen, we gotta talk about this because we mentioned this earlier in the show, right? You are a podcast, so you have your own show. Obviously, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And this is the InnerChild Podcast. So hey, part of the podcast family now. But let's talk a little bit about that experience. How has that been for you? Right. Let's talk about Black in Motion.
Yes.
How has that experience been for you?
It has been so liberating. Like, it has been so freeing because I feel like, a lot of times, you have the opportunity to like showcase bits and pieces of your life and bits and pieces of your perspectives on social media and things like that. But I feel like Black in Motion is giving me an opportunity to really share my views, share my ideas, how I live life, but then also highlighting the work that other young Black entrepreneurs, creatives, professionals, etc., are navigating through life. And the purpose of the Black in Motion podcast is really just to tackle like adulting as a Black person, what's going on with like Gen Z, some millennials, and just how they're navigating life, how they're navigating post-election, how they're navigating post-pandemic, what's going on in their lives right now and how they're overcoming. And so my goal is to just kind of get people from all different types of walks of life. But yeah, it's been great and it's been a very liberating experience.
Right. What are like, I guess, like some of the things you have recognized about yourself through being, a podcast owner, a host, creating or run the show, and just, existing in that space. And the only reason why I asked this is because obviously, like, before me and JB even started shooting, we did a couple of test shoots and, we did a couple things to, practice and get it together, right? Understand each other's flow, understand how to speak and be comfortable on camera, right? And it's still a growing thing. I think we've gotten really good at it where we
Comfortable now.
We understand each other, right? We understand, we flow. Like I can just give JB a look.
Yeah, facts.
He catch a word. And
Y'all in flow.
Yeah, we be spinning. So, You know, has there been any moment where you've reflected on past episodes or, you know, or yes, episodes you've had with other guests where you're just like, I could have did this better or I could have done that better. Like how has that been like critiquing yourself?
Ooh, I think that's been a really good, interesting experience.
Right.
Like when you get it back and you start looking at it, it's like, okay, like there's some things I need to work on. One of those things is filler words. Filler words.
Yeah, that's big.
I still got that problem, but I'm just trying to dim it down now.
Yeah, same. I'm like, okay, girl, you need to work on that a little bit. I think, look, I'm about to say again.
It's all good.
Like now I'm thinking about it. But yeah, that's one thing that I really looked at. I think also just wanting to consistently get better and like think about how you can up it a notch every single time. And so looking at like the first 3 episodes, because I've been batch shooting. So looking at the first 3 episodes, I'm like, okay, this was great. I think there was an opportunity for better transition there, or, you know, how could I have flown into that conversation a little bit better? But I think also one thing for me is I've always been into like public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a different type of speaking. And it's been a challenge for me to go from, you know, getting in front of a stage or in front of a group of people and performing in a way to now like taking that off and relaxing and just talking.
Yeah.
So that's a transition for me. And of course I have those conversations with my girlfriends and my family all the time that are natural and relaxed, like this conversation. But yeah, my background has been public speaking in a very professional spaces. And so it's definitely a transition.
Yeah. I could definitely say the same, even as like somebody who studied media. I was a journalism major. You know, speaking in a public space, you almost tense up still, right? You still figure out a way to tell a story or create, you know, the speech or your presentation. But over here, when you sit down in podcast, it's an intimate space.
Right.
It's an intimate space, but you're still interviewing and you have to find a way to not only just tell a story, but make it comfortable for the guests. It has to be inviting.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's always something that's always, I wouldn't call it a struggle for me, but it's something I'm super conscious about because you never want it to sound like, welcome to the InnerChild Podcast. And, you know, you don't want to sound scripted. So, you know, which is why we always want this space to be super authentic. So, you know, we hope we do that.
And and you guys definitely are. I feel so welcome. So that's great. But I think also for me, to that point, I had to stop. Like at first I was creating like this script, this time to boxing it out. I just had to throw that away. Yeah. I have the topic, I have the guest, I have what we're gonna chat about, like my questions. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I don't need anything else but to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think you know, we have like a set list of, you know, points we want to touch on. And then, you know, as we realize, you know, the guests will naturally bring up something that always comes up. Like you've done it in this episode. We're just like on our notes. Let's get that out. Let's get that out. Right. But I think, you know, it definitely was like man, we got the lights, we got the cameras. Which one am I looking at?
Mm-hmm.
Am I, you know, speaking, you know, making sure I'm super clear and whatever. But then, you know, as we do more episodes, it's natural flowing. I remember I was like, one episode, I just was so tense to even like move, and OG's like, man, you look a little tense, man. Just get comfortable, bro. Like relax a little bit. So yeah, it's natural, but you know, I can't wait to, as you mentioned, like you're backlogging these episodes, which is great. Create that catalog, and then you know you have content built up.
Right.
But I can't wait to tap into your podcast. We'll make sure that, you know, once you start releasing episodes that we put out on our platforms for our viewers to see. So I'm looking forward to it.
And we definitely gonna come over there and spend some time on your couch.
Yes, that would be amazing. I would love that. Yeah, I gotta come.
No, for sure, we will. But I do want to ask you though, right? Because you're wearing a lot of hats. How are you balancing that?
God.
Okay. Let's talk about it.
Amen.
It's God. People ask me that question all the time, and I don't have a good answer. It's God. And I just feel like obviously I do things. You have to partner with God, right? So it's always a partnership. So for me, of course, I'm doing the things I need to do to manage my schedule and to manage life. But there are a lot of things going on between the different entrepreneur endeavors. Leading a nonprofit, like being a regional director in a nonprofit. I work, and I have my own business as well. And so when some of these opportunities came up, I genuinely asked, God, can I handle this? Is this gonna, especially last year, doing so much work on the election? I was like, can I actually handle this, or is this gonna get a little out of control? And he was like, I brought you to it, so you got to do it.
Yeah.
And I try to listen to him and be very present and move and be diligent about moving when he tells me to move. But it's him. I really don't have a great answer because it doesn't make sense to me when I think and I look at my calendar and all the things I have to do and places I have to be. But I'm at peace and I don't feel stressed because I feel like I'm operating in purpose.
That's valid. And, I think it's important. First off, we're young, right? So I think that it's good to be busy, have a lot of things on your plate. But when you're moving with purpose and intention, like things are going to be in your favor, regardless of the situation, right? No matter, how high intensity, how stressful it can get. Like there's a reason why, you're entrepreneur, you have your own businesses, you're still working in corporate, you help run like a whole entire region for a nonprofit. There's a reason why all these things happen or are in your life, right? And it's not just something that it just started now. Like, again, you've talked about from the time you were little to present day, how, you've always continued to find that next thing. And I think that God sometimes, again, I feel like, no pun intended, but always kind of goes back to the inner child, right? Like everything that you're mentioning right now, talking about what you do, as a young adult Brax, is the same thing that little kid Brax was doing already. Now it's just at a larger scale. And I think that's the most important thing. So, you're saying that, you ask God for guidance and guiding your steps. And I think that's important, right? Like, obviously, we're both men of faith, and whoever's out there, whether you believe in God or, whatever you may believe in, seek whatever higher power, higher being that you believe in is out there, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to tell you where, the steps, what you got to do. So no, mad respect to you. And I think that's just important overall though, is, lean not into your own understanding. You feel what I'm saying? And, your path will shall come. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like you said, I think everything is preparation.
Facts.
Everything is building upon the next thing that's keeping you on that journey of purpose. And I think a lot of times people think purpose is like a destination, but it's just it's a continuous journey. You're never gonna really stop. Just chasing purpose. You'll be doing that as long as you live. And so you're right. I think when I think about literally like running a little protest when I was younger, like I'm leading a region now.
Yeah.
Last year I was leading a state, and so things have continuously built upon each other, but it's just always staying ready, being prepared, listening to God, and being willing to move when He tells you to.
Facts. And I also think that when you're passionate about something, like genuinely things will come. Like I'm looking at OD in real time of like, what OD's doing like in the fashion space. And like, I'm just seeing like the projects and stuff he's working on. It's like, he's got this like joy and energy about it, of everything that he's doing. And I think that, again, when you're passionate about something, it oozes out of you, and then it translates. Like it'll find you, like what you ultimately want to do, and things that you have an admiration for, that you genuinely like, and that you have a vested interest in. I think that's important too. Like not only do you have a passion, but you're vested into that passion. It's gonna come out, and it's gonna come tenfold. So
yeah, and it starts. Like, you were putting on fits at FAMU. Like, nobody's surprised you're still throwing fits.
He's been putting on fits since back in the days at the mall in Miami. Polo Man.
Yeah, shout
like, we're not surprised.
Shout out to my mom and daddy. Appreciate that, y'all, man. But I do want to take a little time to talk about womanhood as well, right? We're men. I mean, clearly, right? We're talking to a woman right now. There's this thing about you when I hear you speak, and obviously, besides hearing the hard work and hearing the entrepreneurship and all the ambition that you have, I also hear like this sense of womanhood that you have, right?
Hmm.
And clearly, one, it's a beautiful thing to see. But what I really want to understand is like, where did that come from? Like, how do you get that, right? And how are you looking to continue evolving in your womanhood?
I think that started with my mama, honestly.
Talk about
Yeah.
Miss
Yeah,
Netta.
Miss Netta. Yeah, no, that started with
Hi,
my
Mom.
hey, mommy. Yeah, no, that it definitely started with my mom. I saw very early on how my mom poured into other women and how her girl group was like the center of of course she has my dad and the people in her life, but it can't just be that. Like
Yeah.
you got to be able to pull and pour from the women in your life too, and it's so important. And I wish and pray like sisterhood on every girl because I think we all need and deserve it. And I watched my mom in the relationship she has with my godmom and her best friends
Mhm.
and how they pour into each other. I watched the sisterhood amongst her and her line sisters, and it was always really inspiring, and not just surface level stuff, like no, really showing up when life hits. When things are not great, when you're kind of like in those spaces where you don't know what's next, having those women that you can go to and lean on and know that they'll be in your corner. And I watched her pour that out into the world, but then also into younger girls. Like she's an educator. So I saw her do that with, mentorship of the students. Like I remember my mom was a teacher all the way up into being a principal. That's something she's always stayed true to, is like pouring into other women, specifically other young Black women. And so I think when my time came, it just felt natural to do the same thing. So I've always had a great girl group, but it took some time to cultivate. I will say now in this season of my life, I feel very great about the women that I have around me. I have women in my life that challenge me, that um, show me different, that tell me when I'm wrong, that create space for love, but also like space to like get you together. And it's a very beautiful thing to have. I enjoy, I feel like I have a really good core group of people in my life, women. But then also the energy that they give me allows me to pour that back out into the world too. So I can go and give that to these young HBCU girls every day because I'm getting it from my circle. And also they're willing to invest in that too. So my girlfriends, they come and speak to my girls. They come and share what they're doing in their careers. And it just continues to build this bigger sense of sisterhood. And I think back to BSC and the HBCU mentorship program, I think the biggest joy that I have from it is seeing them create a sisterhood amongst each other. Like they look at each other as sisters, just as being a part of the mentorship program. And I'm like, wow, I don't even think that's what I originally thought would happen. But I think when you create a space for womanhood, um, people, they latch onto it. They feel something. It's hard not to. And they create it amongst each other too. So it's been great.
I like that. I appreciate you being so vulnerable about that, because, hearing a boss woman like you speak on, so many of the things that you do and, so many of the businesses that you've been able to succeed in, it's great to hear. Now, when we do talk about vulnerability, right, and hearing all the strength that you have, right, how are you able to decompress, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
we're all strong people, to whatever extent it might allow us, but when you're having your tough days,
Yeah.
right, when you're having those days where Braxton needs to take that hat off and just lay down real quick,
Hmm.
like, how do you manage that?
I would say 3 things working for me currently are therapy,
Okay.
God, and joy.
Enjoy.
Yes.
Okay.
So therapy, I got into therapy about a year ago. And you go in there for one thing and then you realize you got a whole bunch of other stuff going on. And I'm realizing like, there's things I deal with, and especially being someone who considers themselves high achieving, pretty ambitious, like there's a lot of like, where does a lot of some of that come from? Like the need to always be on. So I've been working through that transparently. And it's been good because I've been finding some techniques that help me to bring it down a little bit. Can't be up all the time. Got to bring it down. God, of course, like I've been in my word, I've been in church, just always finding ways to spend time with him. And that keeps me at center. And then also being in community with other like-minded believers, also young people. It's been great, like being a part of young adults ministry back at home, just being around other people that are marching towards the same goals in life, spiritually. And then joy. I heard this the other day, a few weeks ago, and it's been really good for me. And I can totally agree. I have to plan my joy. And planning my joy gives me something to look forward to. And I think when you're a busy person, you have a lot of stuff going on, you can get really consumed in that. So just like I plan to work, I plan my joy. And if I have that to look forward to, I'll always be pushing forward towards joy. And so that's one of the things that keeps me centered.
I like that. Plan joy.
That's a bar right there.
Yeah,
That's a bar.
because you don't
facts.
wait for happiness to happen. You make moves to get to that place of happiness. So it is real. You do have to plan your joy. You got to plan steps.
Mm-hmm.
You got to plan ways to succeed in that space on a personal level.
Yeah,
That's real. I love that.
sure.
So, Brax, with all it is that you have going on in your life, right? How do you stay connected to your inner child? Like, what are some of those joys? I mean, de facto, but like, how do you stay connected to your inner child?
Yeah, going home.
Okay.
I go home. Like, I go home. I will book that flight. Yeah, I'm going home. So I go home. Like, I go home and jump in the bed with my parents and like chop it up, talk their ears off, just like when I was a kid. So I go home, and going home always brings me back to center.
Mm-hmm.
And so I make time for that. I'm home. My friends are always like, "Girl, do you even live in Raleigh?" I do, but I'm gonna come home.
Right.
So I enjoy coming home. Also, it gives me not only connection to my family and to be able to support the things that my sister has going on. Now she's about to go off to school, but my parents and their business and just being around family. Also, my friends are there. A lot of my childhood friends are still in Atlanta. So being able to go home and spend time with them, it also just helps me to connect with my inner child. And I think also just, I would say, I know I talked about family, but I think my grandparents too.
Okay.
Like my grandparents, my grandmother specifically, both of them, all of them, just being able to get on the phone with them, talk with them, just like I did when I was little, and be able to talk about life and get their perspective and feel like a baby sometimes. And just like be baby by them a little bit. It's always good, I think, for my inner child. It just kind of brings me back home.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's hard.
I like that. Now, Brax, closing on the end of the show, we're not going to ask that question yet, but I am going to tell you, what plans do you have in place moving forward, not just on a personal not just on the entrepreneur aspect, but also on a personal aspect. What plans do you have in place for the future right now?
Yeah. I would say the biggest plans that I have, I think one is just to completely enjoy my 20s. Like, I'll be 27 this year. I feel like the 20s are just inching on towards the end, year by year.
Yeah.
So I really want to enjoy it.
I'll be 29. Oh, Lord.
Oh, I did not know you were old. I feel like Blade told me that, but now it's come back to me. But they're inching up, so I just want to enjoy my 20s, and just enjoy the time. I think also, aside from just like enjoying my 20s, I wanted to just be as present as I can be, like in where I am, because I think you got to think about the future, but I think being present helps you to like really appreciate where you are. So when you get to that place, you have a respect for like the journey. I think other goals. I will say I do plan to stay in North Carolina a little bit longer. So I really want to make it a home. I'll say that.
Okay.
Yeah, I really want to make it a home. So that's a goal for me too. Yeah.
Crazy. You're not gonna come to New York to play.
Just to visit. Just to visit.
Just to visit. That's
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course I think more on a professional side. I want to grow Braxton Simpson Enterprises. One thing I really like, a big dream of mine, is to have a summit where all the girls can come together. So that's a goal of mine in the future. And what else? Oh yeah, I want to see Black in Motion do well. Like we're about to launch, so
right.
I'm excited. I want to see that take off. I told JB, like one of my big goals in life was to have a talk show, and so when this opportunity came up, it was like, I can't believe it. This is awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna keep pushing towards that too.
I can see it. Welcome to the Brack Show.
Yeah. If you could have a conversation with 10-year-old Braxton right now, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to trust herself.
Okay.
Yeah, I would tell her to trust herself. I think one thing that I'm dealing with now, and kind of back to that point about going through therapy, is I'm learning that I have had a tradition, and it didn't really pop up until, I fully left the nest. Like, after leaving home and then leaving TSU and realizing like the decisions I make are decisions I have to stand on,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to be okay with them. And I don't know that I feel like I've always made pretty good decisions, but then when it's time to make them, I waver in if I can make the decision or not. So I feel like I got to call my mama. I got to call my daddy. I got to call my friends. I got to get everybody's perspective. And I just have to remember, trust yourself.
Trust yourself.
You can make a decision. You don't have a track record of making bad decisions. So trust yourself. So I would have started maybe trusting myself a little earlier. That's what I would have told myself.
That's good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Good advice. I respect that.
I love that. So, last question we did want to ask, if there's a sentence or a word, let's do 3 words. 2. Yeah, 2. I like 2. If there's 2 words you can put together when it comes to like the kind of legacy you want to leave behind, what would those 2 words be? Matter of fact, say whatever you want.
I want my life to be a love letter to Black women. Yeah, that's what I want my life to be. And I know I've shared a lot, but if I can leave this earth knowing that like I truly made an impact on other Black women and that their lives are better because of the work that I did, of the time that I poured, of the love that I gave, then I've done what I'm supposed to do. But I genuinely want everything that I'm doing to be for other Black women, to know that they can also do it and that they can also be a part of it too. Like we can be in community together to get it done. So yeah, that's what I say. That's what I want my life to be, a love letter to other Black women.
Dang. That's great.
Yeah.
That was great. That's great. That's real. That's real.
That's what's up.
Braxton, we appreciate you coming on. Before I let Ellie close, I just want to say to all of our viewers out there, please be sure to tune into Black in Motion podcast. Once Braxton,
yes,
starts releasing episodes, it's just on Instagram. It's Black in Motion, just
Black
like that.
in Motion Pod.
Black in Motion Pod. Okay, and then you can find Braxton at all. Just share your personal,
Yes, everything. You guys can connect with me at I am Brax Simpson on all platforms. My website is braxtonsimpson.com, and then you can also follow BSC HBCU and Black in Motion Pod on Instagram. But all the things are in my bio. So
for sure, we're looking to see her on a talk show of her own on a big platform within the next few years, and all that. But like I said, I appreciate you coming on. It's definitely just good knowing that, obviously my relationship with you stems from obviously knowing your brother.
Yeah.
But I just love how, obviously that's your blood brother, but it's just like a natural like family effect that rubs off. And
y'all
we just,
brothers.
I know, we just naturally became cool. So it's just awesome that I have a relationship like that with somebody else. And then, from that comes a beautiful relationship that I have with you. So,
Yeah.
you've shown love to me. Since I've known your brother, and it'll always be love as well. So again, I appreciate you coming on, and yeah.
Yes, I love y'all.
For sure.
Same here. I really appreciate you showing up for your boy, and we're gonna do this again.
Sure.
Next time on yours.
On Black Emotion.
On Black Emotion.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. That's what's up. So look, check us out, y'all. That's gonna wrap it up. It was a great episode. Thank you for tuning in once again to another episode of the InnerChild Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We're also available for you via video on YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify. Official InnerChild is the tag. All right. Till next time, I'm OD. As JB. It's Miss Braxton Simpson, excuse me. Y'all enjoy yourselves. Peace out. Never forget to embrace your inner child.